I live in a wooded area, so I'm really excited to see this box from the Home Depot Seeds program, giving me the opportunity to try out this new Toro 60-volt cordless pole saw. It has a 10-inch bar and chain, a brushless motor, and it has a reach of up to 8 feet. Opening up the case, we have 12 pounds worth of material. I think it's like 9 without the battery, but of course you need the battery. So first thing we have to do is do a little bit of assembly because it is a pole. Looks like we get a sheath for the chain and bar, the adjustment tool. This is the battery charger, and what's this little goodie? This looks like, yeah, just the battery charger. It's just a wall wart. So it's going to be a slow charger. I think it's about 100 minutes to charge that up. And if we come over here, here's the big power supply. And it's 2 amp hours, 60 volts. Comes with a carrying handle. And like many of the manufacturers of other lithium-ion powered devices, they have their own ecosystem of mowers and other yard tools that this battery will drop into. So of course, the first thing we're going to have to do is plug this into the charger so that it's fully charged. Other goodies, the manual and registration form. Oh, and look at that. There's the chain, so you're going to have to get a little messy. I don't see any chain oil included, so you'll have to procure some of that before you can actually operate the device. As I suspected, the battery is only partially charged, so we're going to have to charge it up before we can use it. And to do that, we plug in the wall wart, come over to the other end. We line it up so it says Toro. Put the battery down so the tracks are facing up. And all we do is slide across. And we start getting a status light that tells us the unit is charging. And when it's fully green, that means it's 100% charged. And from empty, it'll take about a little over an hour and a half. So pour yourself a tall one as we wait for it to charge. While waiting for the batteries to charge, we come over to the motor and we loosen the bar cover knob until the side cover comes off. We remove it, and there you see the stud that's going to catch our chain bar. And this is where the chain's going to wrap around. And this is going to be the adjustment stud. There's a screw forward over at this end. And you're going to use this tool that's included to adjust the tension. But that all comes later. So right now I'm going to show you how to attach the chain bar and get the chain on the bar. Should you need to replace your chain, it can be noted that it comes with an Oregon chain, and there's the part number for you, made in the USA, so you don't have to necessarily buy a Toro chain for this device. When picking up the chain, make sure to wear gloves because it's a very sharp instrument and it will cut you. Important thing to note about the chain is there's an underside to it, which is just these teeth. And the actual cutting side is on top. You want to have it so that little hook is facing forward. The chain's going to turn in that direction. And then you have this tooth. And then that just repeats on down. Don't worry if you forget it. One, it's on the label of the chain. But two, it's actually on the tool. So you can reference that should you forget which way to thread the chain onto the chain bar. To get the chain on the chain bar, we orientate ourselves by going with the logo so that we can read it. there's another reference that tells you which way the teeth need to be going. The direction is going to be clockwise. This round end has little sprockets that are sticking out. And that's where you're going to thread up the chain first, then dropping it into the little split that's here. And you're going to bring that all the way to the back. And then we're going to wrap it around the sprocket here. And this pin is going to align with the bar. And you see this adjustment pin here? That's going to align up with the bottom hole on the chain bar. And if it doesn't quite align, you can use the adjustment tool to make that ride forward so that it drops into the hole. Because that will make the chain bar go forward or back to take the slack out of the chain. Here we go, real time. You drop it at the nose. You bring it back. You're just dropping it into the groove. Okay, it's easier to do the top since the bottom will be hanging due to gravity. You know, they don't have that problem in space, do they? Anyway, so now I'm going to put on a glove, but you're going to pull on this and you're going to wrap it around this drive right here. With the chain on the bar, we put it over the wheel. We line up our pins. Okay, so now we see that there's a fair amount of slack. Don't worry, we'll take that out. But the important part is that this guide is in place and that you got the pin lined up. And now all we have to do is just put the cover back on and tighten it down. And make sure you get the orientation right. The little directions go toward the back. And it goes like this. And you just turn clockwise to tighten this cover, which will do nothing to the chain. It just covers this area and secures it. So we're looking on the other side of the unit, and there's the adjustment screw. And using our tool, we are going to turn clockwise to pull up this slack. As you adjust, make sure that these teeth catch the opening underneath the chain bar. And if you get some teeth that don't want to come up, that means that it's caught further inside, so you may have to take off the cover and readjust. Make sure that the teeth, especially at the bottom of the chain, are lined up into the chain bar. With the cover in place but not fully tightened down, finish making your adjustments so that there's no slack left in the chain. So now you should be able just to pull it about 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch, but there should be no slack. The chain shouldn't just be hanging loose, but it should be able to just to pull a little bit and snug. Actually, I'm just going to give that a little bit more of a turn. Yeah, that looks better. You don't want it so tight that you can't just do what I'm doing right now. If you hear this sound, the chain is on too tight and it can't move, so you need to loosen it. Now you come over on this side and you tighten down the knob. At this point, you got a sharpened chain on the chain bar, so it's probably wise to put the sheath over it so that you don't hurt yourself or anyone around you. You kind of just have to juggle this on. And now we're just going to assemble it. The pole sections, which is very easy because there's a cable that runs between the poles, and literally you just pull them together and they'll snap into place. You will have to tighten a connection here, and you just use the tool. So there are only 2 spots where it links together, and that'll keep the pole in its full extended 8-foot position. If your pole doesn't want to lock together, make sure that this pin lines up with this hole, and once that pin pops up, then it'll lock, and then you just tighten the connection on this side. Before we can start cutting anything, we need to get some chain lube inside the unit. If we look at the sight window, we see that there's nothing in there, it's empty. That's the way it comes. So we go to our wing nut and we push down on the textured end of it. That flips up. And now we just twist counterclockwise. And there's a string attached to it. We grab our favorite chain lube oil, and then we just pour it in there until it's full. And what this oil does is it protects the chain, the sprocket on the end of the chain bar, and the chain bar itself from wearing out prematurely. Now don't be tempted to top it all the way off. You just want to get it to where you can see that the sight is full and that it's coming up towards the top, because you have to make some room for the cap to go back in there. And note that there is a little air vent in the cap. And then you just press it back down, and now we're ready to put on the battery. Never horse around with this maintenance-wise with the battery on the unit. Take it off. It's just a smart safety precaution. And a word to the wise. Make sure that after you've used the unit that this area is cleaned off of any debris and stuff, because you don't want anything going in here and contaminating the lube. In order to operate this unit, you need to engage the safety switch and the trigger. So what you do is you pull back with your thumb. Now you're able to squeeze with your fingers. You can let go of the thumb at this point. And as long as you hold this here, you'll have full speed on the chain. You do your cut and you release. Then you're going to have to engage the safety switch each time you want to use the trigger. Maybe a little bit annoying, but a smart safety move on their part. So we got our boots on, some gloves. We're going to be wearing a helmet, face shield. Speaking of shields, we need to take this off before we put on the battery, unless you're transporting it, because if you accidentally put the battery on and trigger this, then that chain is going to rip up your shield. To attach the battery, there are tracks on the top side. That's the bottom side. And we simply put it on the track, slide forward, and it catches. Doesn't come out. To release, big gray button back here. You push that in, and it disengages. Let's try that one more time. It's a little stiff because it's new. Get both tracks on, and it comes back off. Got to make sure you get on both tracks. Now we're good to go. I want to make sure the chain bar is being lubed. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run it for a little bit and see if I get some oil splattering on this cardboard. And there you can see that the chain bar is actually being lubed. Now let's cut a limb. So that little tiny limb there is what we're going to cut. And obviously I can't reach it. Even if I had some kind of a cutter, it would be awkward, but it's within easy reach of this 8-foot pole, and I'm not even extending it out. I could go as high as this. Things to watch out for: don't let anything strike on this nose portion while the chain is running because it'll kick back on you. So you want to cut the underside of the bar, preferably over here, or on the top side. This tiny branch we're just going to cut through. Normally you do a slight undercut and then you come above and cut all the way through. But this is so small that I'm just going to cut it off probably around there and try to avoid hitting that or the back one. So we're going to put our chain right above where we want to cut, squeeze the safety and the trigger, and now I'm just going to clean that up a little bit. We have these two. This is going to be a little trickier because I don't have much room to negotiate in. Safety wise, if it kicks back, I have this tree that's in the way. So I'm in a pretty good safe area. After doing all those cuts, we check battery status, and we are 3/4 full. Removing the battery, we are safe to come over to the chain side, and you see the chain bar and chain are being lubed nicely on both ends. Although the battery's 3/4, we still have plenty of oil in our reservoir, so we're still good to go for more cuts. So at this point, if you are done, you would clean this off, wipe it down, put the guard back in place, charge the battery, keep it separate from the tool so that you don't run into an accident. Overall, I'm very pleased with the tool. It is front heavy, and despite the big size of the battery, because it's lithium ion, it doesn't actually weigh much, so you don't get a lot of counterbalance, but it is still manageable even for a smaller guy like myself. The 10-inch bar gives you plenty of reach, and although they claim you can do 4x4, most of my tree limbs are much smaller than that, so no difficulty there. Make use of this. Remember, it is a chainsaw. Anything in this area will generally provide a kickback, so be careful how you approach it. It is a serious tool, but I thought the safety mechanism here, you know, the two function, pull back, squeeze trigger, would be a hassle, but it turns out that it actually is very easy and natural to engage and didn't cause an issue for me. The only real negatives I'm seeing to this is that it is 8 feet long, and therefore you're always stuck with storing and using an 8-foot long tool. It doesn't collapse. You could technically take it apart here and here and fold it over, but that's not really how it's designed to be used. They do give you an eyelet so that you could put, you know, like a harness on to help you with balancing. It's not even mentioned in the manual, but it's there. So the balance is a slight issue, but again, it's not a deal killer for me. And I was able to navigate around trees. You just have to be really careful because in the end, it's still a chainsaw. And although it's a fair distance from you, if it gets out of hand, it can do some serious damage to anything it touches. Oh, the other sort of con is that when you release the trigger, this doesn't electronically break. It just winds down. So you'll have this chain just running across. My corded chainsaw has an electric brake so that when you release it, it instantly stops, which is a nice feature, and I think that should have been included on here. I do like the oil reservoir. The way they implement their cap is really nice, and it's kind of nice to not be trailing a power cord and dealing with a battery. It does take a while for it to charge up, but it's very, very light, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Bad thing as far as counterweight goes, doesn't really provide enough, but a good thing because if you have to lug it around, it's easy to carry. It takes about a little over an hour and a half to fully charge the unit, but as you saw with the branches that I cut down, so it didn't use up much power. From homeowners, this is probably a great little tool to add to your garden collection. If you found this video interesting or useful, give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment, join the subscription team, and as always, thank you ever so much for watching.